little bit about what happened very quickly at our last meeting on Tuesday at Navajo Canyon. We had a man, Jim Horn, speaking about Islam and Sharia law and all that kind of thing. And CARE, the organization, Council of American Islamic Relations, decided that they were going to tell us no, we shouldn't have that speaker, and became very vocal in sending us, what do you think, 100 emails? Yeah, telling us not to have the speaker. Well, we stood up and we had our speaker, and there was no picketing, no nothing. It worked out great. So, just let you know. It's still America, but the emails, it was very interesting. At first, they started coming from all over the United States, and as we got closer and closer, I don't know if you noticed, but it pared down to El Cajon, La Mesa, Claremont Mesa, San Diego. It was nerve-wracking. But anyway, moving along. Carl DeMaio, the author of the Comprehensive Pension Reform Initiative, city councilman on seat 5 from 2008 to 2012. He worked on expanding the San Diego Convention Center, and he is running. I didn't even write that down. I mean, I'm like looking at this going, okay, Margie. Running for the 52nd. Come on up, Carl.
Thank you so much, and it's great to see this club. It really is. When the original idea came about to have an evening meeting and to have it downtown, I thought it was brilliant, because our hope is that we're going to be able to reach out and bring new people into the party to make sure that we are flexible and convenient for people to come and learn about solutions to our nation's problems. And so I'm so thrilled to see the Downtown Club, the Republican Women Federated meeting, and obviously growing. I'm running for the congressional district here in San Diego. It's everything north of the 8th Freeway in the city of San Diego, plus Poway, Coronado, and downtown. It's an amazing district, and I think it really reflects kind of where our politics are going. As of January 15th of this year, the 52nd became a plurality independent district. Independence or decline to state, none of the above. That was the party label that people chose the most often in the district, eclipsing Republicans by 15, 20, and now it's up to about 80, 90 individuals. And then of course Democrats are in third place. But it really reflects, I think, where people are. People are disgusted with the dysfunction in Washington, and they're pretty frustrated with the two political parties. They don't think that our parties, A, stand on principle, and B, find ways to work to solve problems. Ultimately, you need to stand on principle, but you need to be able to get things done. You should be judged on results, not the rhetoric, not the division, but have you actually achieved reform? And that's why I'm so proud of what we did here in San Diego. When I was elected, people were predicting the bankruptcy of the city. And my predecessor on the city council, my opponent today, Scott Peters, had presided over 8 years of budgets that were not balanced, 8 years of draconian cuts in our most precious services, after-school programs, library hours in some branches were reduced by vote of Scott Peters and his colleagues by up to 40%. Road repairs canceled, and obviously you've seen what our roads are like for the past several years. Water rates spiked, doubled, but you know what? Big business got subsidies during this time. And of course the pension crisis with outrageous payouts. The librarian earning $234,000 a year in pension payout, far more than she received even working for taxpayers when she was working. And so I inherited this mess, and I said, we're not going to declare bankruptcy, we're not going to raise taxes, and we're not going to cut any more services. We're going to rethink how our city government works. We're going to embrace innovation, streamlining, competition, technology. We're going to reform those unsustainable pensions. The problem with our city government was not that you, the taxpayer, weren't sending in enough money. You were paying your fair share. The problem is that we were not spending that money properly. And I'm absolutely seeing the same thing happen in Washington. We can balance our national budget. We can tackle the national debt crisis if we have responsible leadership in Washington. Now, part of what we did in the city of San Diego is I actually cracked open the city budget, went through line by line, and produced my own budget plan, the Roadmap to Recovery, 360 pages. As a member of the minority of the city council, by the way, when I was sworn in, I was on the losing end of a 2-6 minority. It was me and Kevin Faulkner. And when we laid out these ideas for reform, initially, the Democrats said, no, we're not going to do it. We lost vote after vote after vote. But eventually, we were able to make the case to San Diegans of every political party, Democrat, Republican, Independent, that we needed fundamental change. And they started holding their council members accountable for, why aren't you voting for these ideas? And we were able to get the bulk of my budget plan through on a bipartisan vote through the city council in waves. Successive attempts finally allowed us to get things done. Now that's because we had a game plan. We stood on principle, we knew where we wanted to go, we knew what reform looked like, we knew how to make our city government work again. And we looked for every opportunity to get those ideas implemented. Now what we could have done is just said, well, we're just going to decide not to agree to anything unless you accept 100% of our reforms. No. We constantly looked for ways to get our ideas implemented, to make it possible to put these ideas into action. In Washington, we need to see the same thing. Yeah, lay out that long-term plan, stand on principle, but look for every single bill that's passed to advance your vision of how you can solve problems in this country. Big government did not appear overnight. Toxic regulation that are choking our small businesses did not get written and imposed overnight. The far left put these programs into place that created the problems wave after wave after wave, year after year. So we have to take a pragmatic approach of having our comprehensive reform agenda on every issue and then using every opportunity to get as many of our ideas implemented as possible. That's problem solving. It's principled problem solving, and I think that the same approach we used in San Diego is what will work in Washington. Obviously the fiscal crisis is our top priority. You cannot spend more money than you take in. We are giving our children and grandchildren, we're leaving them this debt, we're stealing from them. And so we need to be rethinking that budget and living responsibly. But one of the other things we need to be thinking about is a prosperity agenda. Because if everybody in this country who wanted a job could get a job, we would have a surplus. And a lot of problems that we face today, whether it's lack of health insurance or it's inability to send your child to college, a lot of these problems would be solved if we focused on creating our economy and making it prosperous again, giving the American dream back to this great country. I spent a lot of time in the fall doing a college tour, going to every college campus and meeting with as many college students as possible. I remember at the time people said, give up, you're never going to get the support of college kids. Actually, the latest poll shows I'm 2 points ahead in the youth demographic. And one of the things I did is I showed up and I said, it's 2013, the fall of 2013. 20 years ago, I was sitting right there in that chair where you are. I was a college kid, 1993. I had been orphaned at 13, raised by Jesuits. My brother, sister, and I were split up. I arrived at Georgetown University on scholarship. 36 bucks cash in my pocket. 2 bags and a box. And as I saw my classmates being moved in by their moms and dads and brothers and sisters in the SUVs with all the TV sets and all the refrigerators and whatever wonderful things, I was consumed with 2 real big concerns. Number one, my scholarship would not allow me to get through 4 years. At most, I could probably do 3 years, more likely 2.5 years. So I knew that my first visit had to be to the dean's office to take extra credit, take a larger class load. Second concern, while I had scholarship to pay for my academic credits, I did not have any money for health insurance, room and board, books, or even food. And so I knew the second appointment I had to make is to get in the work-study office and get myself a job. And so I actually didn't just get 2 part-time jobs in the beginning, but I eventually got a full-time job and took extra credits to graduate in 2.5 years. And I just worked real hard. It was focused on getting through and surviving. And then instead of taking a job for someone else, I said, well, I've got a good idea. I want to start a company that teaches government managers how to manage more efficiently. I mean, novel concept. And you know what? People hadn't really thought of that idea up to that point. So I said, I think we should do this. And so I found out that the SBA gives out loans and grants. So I went to them and I said, I'd like a small business loan or grant. And they said, now, there. You have no experience. We're not going to give you a loan. We're not going to give you a grant. You go work for 5, 6, 7 years and you come back. By the way, here's a list of training courses that SBA offers on how to become a business person. I'm like, well, I'd like to become a business person. Just give me a loan and grant. I can do it. Nope. So then I went to the big banks. And I remember going to bank after bank and they got the same story, which is, no. Well, we can't even give you a loan, not even a line of credit. You don't have a house or stock to securitize your loan. So no loan, no line of credit for you. So I did what any college kid in my situation would do at that point. I took out applications for 2 credit cards, got them, and maxed them out. And then started my first company. It was the Performance Institute. We held our first seminars on how to do budgeting and strategic planning and performance management in government. And we were able to sell those seminars off the shelves, and that became something that kept growing to a multi-million-dollar company. And then I started my second company by age 28 to take the Sarbanes-Oxley Act and start holding corporations accountable for their financial statements. In the wake of Enron, law was passed to say that we don't want Wall Street cooking the books. We need to have integrity in these systems. That then led me to the San Diego mess. Looking at the city's budget, looking at their financial statements and what Scott Peters did to, as the SEC charged, commit securities fraud, costing our city its credit rating and pushing us out of the bond market for 5 years. When I took office, we were 5 years behind on our audited financial statements. It's like you not filing your taxes for 5 years. He handed that off. Kevin and I were on the audit committee, and we were able to move those audits through the city so that we could get clean opinions, finally, clean opinions for the taxpayers. So the taxpayers knew where their money was going. So, prosperity. I laid out this message to these college kids. I said, 20 years ago, I was sitting where you are, and this is where I am today. And by this point, they're like, and I said, and here's the punchline. 2013, if I were to try to do it all over again, if I were back in your shoes, I'd fail. I wouldn't be able to do it. So the reason why I'm running for Congress is because the opportunities that were afforded to me to overcome adversity, they're not there anymore. The opportunities are not the same. And I think you ought to be stomping mad, whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or I don't know what, Republican maybe, but there was 2 or 3 Republicans in the audience. I said, you ought to be real angry with what Washington politicians have done to your future. They've taken your opportunities away. The same opportunities that our fathers and grandmothers had, you don't have. And so we have to go out there and try to explain to people that we can solve a lot of problems if we allow people who have good ideas and are willing to work hard, allow them to have the American dream again. And I think that that's something that we miss in this party, is that this party has, unfortunately, from time to time, become the party of big business. Big labor is bad, but big business is just as bad. And big government is even worse than both of them. But both of those, big business and big labor, like big government. And so what we have to do is say, our policies ought to be judged by the working family or the small business point of view. Because you know what? The big companies, they have the money to hire lawyers and lobbyists and CPAs to get special treatment, to get around the rules. I'm more concerned about that single mom. I'm concerned about that first-time entrepreneur in making sure that the system works for them. That they have the same opportunity as some big company. And I think that, again, that is where our ideas of limited government, of individual responsibility, of opportunity and hard work, of less regulation, of a fair and simple and appropriate tax system, those things, I think, can be translated into votes and support and ultimately to success in this country for the American people. I'm excited about being able to tackle that. That, in essence, is what New Generation Republicanism is all about. Because if you walk and say I'm a traditional Republican, people don't want to know about that, and rightfully so. But a New Generation Republican is pragmatic, as I said before. Principled, but pragmatic. Doesn't just vote no, but says what they're for and lays out detailed solutions. New Generation Republicans also have an expansive set of issues that they're willing to tackle. They're not just talking about balanced budgets or the tax code. They're talking about healthcare, the environment, and education. All the issues that we all care about. I've never met a Republican yet who says, I want to destroy the environment. So why don't we expect our elected officials, our party leaders, to start talking passionately about environmental protection, or healthcare access, quality of care, coverage. These are all issues that we ought to be laying out our ideas on and showing how our ideas can work. And finally, show up to communities that we haven't been in before. The Latino community, the Asian community, women, college kids, LGBT. We need to be there. They don't believe that we care because we haven't cared enough to show up. Now, I know some of you might say, well, if we show up, they're not going to be happy with us. So be it. Mea culpa. Haven't been here for a couple years, haven't been here for decades. But guess what? We're here now. In some cases, in some districts, the Republican congressman hasn't been to some of those groups in decades. But we're here today, and we want to listen, number one, to what's your concern on all these issues. We want to know what you're struggling with. And number two, we'd like your ideas. How can we help? And then, of course, that generates not only dialogue on solutions, but goodwill and trust. And ultimately, might result in support. I think it will result in support. And so, I hope that you will join me in moving forward this concept of a new generation Republican. We not only are talking about picking up one seat, that's important, but this is about advancing a national message that I think Republicans, independents, and even some Democrats desperately want to see on a national stage. Questions, comments, suggestions? I know I went on a little long, but please don't be shy.
We have a few minutes for questions.
Okay, great. Sorry about that.
Where's Judy? She's not here to ask.
Yes, ma'am.
You talk a lot about, the new generation of Republicans, and you spoke a lot about, as well, you in college, and how in overcoming adversity, you don't have the same opportunities that you had are no longer there. And one of the issues I see for my generation in particular that everyone knows about but isn't talking about is the student loan crisis. And we've got tuition that's gone up in the last 20 years over 500%, and the government's done nothing. And our choices are don't get an education or take on these college tuition. And not only has college tuition gone up, but I only graduated in 2009 from law school. And the two loans that I had to take out were fixed at 8.5% interest and 7.5%.
And you can't refinance them, can you?
I can't,
Right.
because I relied on President Bush passed the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. I relied on that program. I worked for the county, and I consolidated my loans with the federal government. I'm now fixed at a 7.9% interest rate, and President Obama just put in his budget to basically do away with the loan forgiveness program. So that's 4 years of my life relying on this, giving myself to public service. And, interest just keeps accruing on top of, tuition that is at $40,000. You've got an entire generation taking on massive debt. Now it's student loans. We're expected to take on this $17 trillion debt that's rising, and Obamacare can't be funded without my generation. We have a government that will mention student loans as a way to get votes, but then does absolutely nothing, and then gets into office and does something like take away a great program like the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And I guess I'd like to hear specifically how you can change that in Washington.
So one of the things that we were doing on the college campuses is laying out what I call my free to be plan. By the way, I love the alliteration. The free to be plan that talks about the freedoms that college kids want. That generation wants freedom. And we talked about you should be free to live your life the way you want without government intrusion in your private decisions.
Thank you.
You should be free to pick your own doctor and your own health care plan. So we talked about Obamacare, the generational inequity that's occurring in those policies. We talked about being able to be free to pursue the career of your dreams. And that means that we have to revitalize the economy so that there are jobs in your career path. We also talked about being able to be free to afford your college degree. And that's where we talked about changes in the student loan program. I proposed as part of the Free to Be plan to allow you to refinance your student loans. Right now you're not allowed to refinance your student loans. A lot of the banks are saying, well, if we do forgiveness or we adjust the loan, then it counts against us on our balance sheet under federal law. Fine, change the rule. We have kids that are going into default and going bankrupt over these issues. I'd rather be able to provide flexibility so they can actually continue to make their payments and work their way out of it. We also have to be taking a look at the public service program that you're talking about. What I proposed is looking at not just dealing with the interest rate challenges, but a percentage of your income under public service. It would not exceed a certain percentage of your income for 10 years, 15 years, if you dedicate your time to public service. That's great. Shouldn't we all want folks to at least consider going into public service and giving back to their community? And you get great experience, and then you can go to the private sector. It's a win-win-win. But our government's not thinking about being an employer of choice. You also save a lot of money from the taxpayer if you have this new talent coming in the public service area. So please go check out my website, carldeMaio.com. It has the Free to Be plan on the site. The college kids love this. They totally get the challenges that are presented in each of these areas. Other comments and questions?
Time for one more.
Yeah, one more, yes.
And Carl, I'm a homeowner and I've had all kinds of people, I'm sure you all have, come to your home and they're not all college graduates. How can we help people understand that we need everybody to work in our country, not just college graduates? I mean, I've had fabricators, I've painters, I've drywallers, I've had people put windows in. We all do that. We all need that in our homes.
I think that part of what we're seeing, and I was meeting with some of the private education firms. Linnell Lynch, who's Bill Lynch's wife, runs a beauty academy.
One dumb, I didn't understand what she meant.
What's that?
I didn't understand what she meant. Young people coming to your house.
People that don't have college degrees doing work.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Do you have to have a college degree to be successful in this country?
No,
And I don't think that you have to.
I never graduated.
But if you want one, you should be able to pursue a college degree and enter that field of study. And so I think that we ought to create an opportunity society where there are multiple ladders for people to achieve the American dream. And when you have an opportunity society, people are looking at what you're able to do, how hard you're willing to work, what your ideas are, and ultimately that should drive your career. So I think that we've got to be looking at all sorts of policies from that standpoint of how do we prepare our children for a 21st century economy. Not everyone needs the same skill set, not everyone learns the same way. But again, you have this mentality in Washington that they need command and control and everyone ought to do the same thing. Baloney. Our economy is so diverse now, and we need to have education systems and avenues for people to succeed in that new environment. I'll end with this. This is such an important year, 2014. I want to really put a plug in for our city council candidates in District 2 and 6. My district overlays District 2 and 6, so part of what I'm trying to do is build grassroots volunteers, canvassing operations, voter ID programs, so that when we get to election day, we draw those voters out, get them to the polls, and they're going to vote not only for me, but they're going to vote our entire reform ticket. Kevin Faulkner cannot govern as a mayor unless he has at least 4 votes on the city council. And we have 4 Republican votes that we should have on the city council Right now, there's an interim council member in District 2, so we're down to 3. But after this election, we have to hold those 4 seats. When I was elected, it was 2-6. It took us a lot to win those extra 2 votes. We've got to give that veto authority to Kevin so that he can create some check and balance in our city government.
Yes.
So Chris Kate and Lori Zapp, District 6 and District 2, got to get those 2 across the finish line. Also, we are joined tonight by District Attorney Bonnie DeMaio. And her election should be done in June. I think it will be done in June. I think she's going to have an outstanding result. But you're looking at someone who took over a district attorney's office when it was in a complete state of mess. And she rebuilt it brick by brick, restoring integrity, has an amazing conviction rate, and she's a leader statewide on a number of law enforcement issues. She's a great voice on those issues statewide. And so I can't think of any reason why we wouldn't resoundingly re-elect her, so please do what you can for Bonnie. But we've got a great opportunity in 2014 in my race to take potentially the Senate back. And that should be a game changer in Washington to make sure that we at least get to put our bills on the Senate floor and perhaps get them to the president's desk, and then he has to decide whether he's going to veto. And I think that when those bills go on his desk, there may be some bills that we're actually able to get bipartisan support for because we're building a national movement of people saying we've got to fix the finances, fix the economy, and hold government accountable. So the Senate is going to be a critical challenge this year, and I think that we will succeed. Thank you for all you do. I'm happy to come back anytime you want, and let's continue to grow this great club. Take care.
Carl.
Yes, thank you, Carl.